Welcome back to Elevate Ordinary. Today we are talking about getting ready for baby time because it is almost baby time. See you in a moment. Well, hello and welcome back to Elevate Ordinary. I'm your host, JonMarc Grodi.
And I'm Teresa Grodi, and I'm hot.
I agree. I want to just let it be known right now.
I've got my cup of ice.
I completely agree with that statement.
I'm 8 months pregnant, or however many months. 7? Am I only 7?
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
And we're back with another conversation about, no, that's a different show.
Pregnancy.
Extraordinary conversations about the ordinary pursuit of truth,
my husband
goodness,
hosts
and
too
beauty.
many shows.
I have to do different things. We're back again talking about, it's more aspects of our day-to-day life that we maybe take for granted, that maybe God has more to give us than we're currently embracing. The opportunities for virtue, the opportunities to grow in holiness, the opportunities to serve one another more if we can just take those pieces out, examine them a bit, crack them open, and see what more the Lord is sending to us that we're not quite seeing yet. So we're talking about, as always today in particular, about getting ready for baby, which so we've got some experience with.
Yeah, we kind of wanted. So right now I'm pregnant with baby number 6. This little girl. I really want another ultrasound just to be certain. We've named her Mary Prudence.
If this baby's not named Mary Prudence, it'll have to be Mary with an E. It'll have to be Mariadoc Prudence. That's actually kind of an awesome name.
Uh-oh.
Okay, we're good. Never mind. It can be either way.
You heard it here first. But so we kind of, I have a lot of ambitions for the topic of pregnancy because I like talking about my opinion a lot. But we wanted to do an episode specifically about how we as a couple prepare for the baby. Because our life has been kind of lived in these 2-year cycles of trying to get pregnancy.
Not having to try very hard.
No, I mean, we've gotten pregnant 100% of the time, the first time we've ever tried.
And joking aside, we're really blessed in that. We know that's something that people struggle with out there.
Yeah, and I always joke, because I talk about NFP sometimes publicly, and people are like, but you have 6 kids. And I'm like, it's worked 100% of the time for us. There's never been a time where we tried to abstain and got pregnant. So anyway, doesn't matter. That's not part of this conversation. But we kind of live in these 2-year cycles of infertility, working towards me getting pregnant, in terms of making sure my body is healthy, our family is healthy, we're ready to go through that pregnancy cycle again. Can
we pause?
Yes.
Hold on. What did you say? 2 years cycles of infertility?
I was getting to the cycle, the whole cycle.
Okay. I'm sorry. Can you start that statement?
Sure.
I was just confused.
Sure. Yeah. So we live in these 2-year cycles, beginning with the infertile phase.
With the new baby, nursing, all that.
Yeah, all that. We're basically, I'm not pregnant, or, I'm not pregnant.
Yeah.
But then we start to recognize that we want to get pregnant again, and it's possible for my body to be happy being pregnant again. And then we're working towards me getting pregnant, towards our health, towards our habits, and then pregnancy, and then the postpartum period, So we live, our kids are all 2 years apart, so it is this 2-year cycle that we live in. So we just wanted to give kind of our thoughts about that. And pregnancy for us has always been we've wanted to get pregnant more often than we have gotten pregnant, but we have always assessed our reality of I know I want a baby 6 weeks after I just had one. Because the newborn is gone. I don't have a newborn anymore, and I want it.
I don't know. Did we ever actually decide on the 2-year cycle? I don't think we ever did.
No. We just always felt
from the beginning of our marriage, it was always either you had concerns about your health, or when we first got married, we didn't have any place to live, so that was kind of we were
living with relatives,
and it just kind of always worked out that the timing was just about right. Whenever at the 2-year mark, it was just It's time to have another baby. Yeah.
Yeah, like I would really base it on how I felt, I felt in my body, how I felt in my mental space. When we decided, and that's us, and
And that's an important, again, a different episode on NFP stuff, but it's an important aspect of being a Catholic couple is that this is something that is to be intentional, prayed through, discerned through. On the one hand, the church calls us to a high standard of being open to life and being to embrace life, to have children, to that whole thing, that whole ideal of family life. But then also that we're to be intentional about it. You have to be working with your spouse. You have to be evaluating your health and making sure that you're doing it together.
What things are grave and what things are not grave. Like we've been in situations where it's like we are ready to get pregnant again. And, we've cleared all my health problems. We've gotten the series of whatever I needed to get, before we conceived again and cleared that. And it's like, 9 months from now would be a wedding for, like a friend that we'd be in. And it's like, well, that's simply not a grave reason, for me to wait another month to get pregnant. And thanks be to God, because Lucy wouldn't be here. But yeah, so discerning as a couple. Yeah, I wasn't prepared to talk about discernment as a couple.
Well, then let's not talk about it anymore.
We'll talk about it in an NFP episode.
Back on to baby getting ready for.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk, because JonMarc is equally preparing for the baby as I'm like going through pregnancy. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about like your priorities as a man before the next baby comes.
Sure. I was thinking about this the other day, in that it's come natural to me, just in my own discernment, my own kind of working on myself since we've been married, that as we get ready for the baby, I begin to feel more the responsibility, the weight of that. And that has translated into me, wanting to dive deeper into prayer and into getting myself physically ready. A couple times I've leading up to the time the baby is due, like fasting from certain foods and alcohol, just to really physically ready, really working on getting exercise, getting good sleep. Because after the baby comes, just the way it works out in our family, I end up doing a lot, because we really want you to be able to recover well. And there's just a lot of sleepless nights and baby sleep training and, still taking care of all the kids and all that stuff. And so I do a lot to get the house ready. I do a lot to get myself ready, so that when it happens, I'm really ready for it. But then also, one thing I've been thinking about this time is that I want to make sure I keep that going all the way through. I think in the past I've tended to kind of drop my discipline after the baby's there.
Because it's fun to just snuggle.
It's done. Now we can just relax for a bit. I'm off work for a bit, and but I want to keep it going through so that I can. We don't have unnecessary months of me getting fat while we're just cuddling with a new baby.
Yeah, well, no, that's really true, because a lot of times 5 of our babies are in the August time. One is just over in September. So this is our first baby out of that time period. Yeah. But we go into winter and we both put on a ton of weight because we're just snuggling with the baby and we're sleep deprived and whatnot. And JonMarc, so he has a lot to handle during my pregnancies and during the postpartum period. So it makes total sense. When you were talking about this the other morning, it makes total sense that your goal is then to be she's slipping in discipline because of whatever I go through in pregnancy. It's really day by day. I'm just trying to figure out how I feel. When should I eat this meal? When should I eat that meal? This made me sick yesterday. I was incapacitated after dinner time, so we're going to try this a different way. It's just a lot of me trying to feel out how the heck I feel and how I can actually contribute to the household. Yeah. And then you have to shoulder the majority of the burden during that time. And then also during the postpartum time, because we've learned over the course of several crazy, postpartum depression, crazy periods.
Difficult ones, yeah.
That if I don't rest and heal my body, like we are in for serious instability, like in the near future. And so like it is super sacred, like the postpartum period for me, like resting. And we just kind of take that's one practical thing. We kind of take everything off of our calendar from the due date for like 2 months. Like we don't take on responsibilities or things like that, or trips or, weddings or things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think taking that really seriously and taking the practical aspects of that really seriously. We talk about it a lot on this show. And also, Andrew Reinhardt over on Physically Spiritual here on Elevate Ordinary talks about this a lot, that as Catholics, oftentimes we, or even as just Christians in general, we end up with this really compartmentalized faith life, that, the faith and intentionality and discernment and prayer over here. And then other things that seem to us kind of secular or neutral, like, oh, what I eat or how I sleep, that's all over there. And it's nice and it may be important, but it's not really that big of a deal. That stuff affects your whole person, and your faith is about your whole life. Everything you do or don't do is how it should be, how you're being obedient to God and how you're trying to lean into the vocation that he's given you. And when you're getting ready for the baby, or then dealing with the after effects of having had a baby as a woman, as a couple, as a family, all those things contribute. I mean, like your sleep matters. What you're eating, whether it makes you feel like trash, or remain healthy and strong and alert, it matters. As a husband, you pick up literally and figuratively a lot of, or you ought to, after the baby is born, you pick up a lot of new responsibilities, and new things that you need to do for the family. Being strong, being fit is part of that, is helpful for that. So the preparation for getting pregnant, the preparation for the baby to come, and then maintaining your rule of life, your disciplines after the baby comes, so that you can remain strong and present to be a man for these others that the Lord has given you. That is really important.
Yeah. And our kids even share in this a little bit, because eggs are just such a struggle for me when I'm pregnant. The whole pregnancy, like eggs, for some reason, they're just so nasty and I don't want to eat them. But they're like my prenatal vitamin. Like we get really good pastured eggs from our friends who are farmers, and they're full of all kinds of things that me and the baby need. And so a lot of times, like the kids even have to watch me eat like a delicious piece of toast with like my eggs, or like I've been making oatmeal and like putting eggs in it. And the kids are like, Cecilia, our sweet little Cecilia, is just like, wow, I'm so glad I'm watching you eat this oatmeal, Mommy. It's good for you and the baby. I'm like, I know, guys. So everybody kind of shoulders this like strange time where, like, I'm just trying to be real and honest about the things I need. And I am an overachiever, so I don't tend to like milk laziness for all it is. Like, so I don't necessarily have to. I feel bad when I am out of commission. I feel really bad when I'm out of commission.
I think weaknesses in your virtues and habits as a couple really come to the forefront during like getting ready, when the baby is getting closer, or in the postpartum time, because it's a tough time physically, spiritually, mentally. There's a lot of upset that goes on there. And so if you're not already strong, if you don't already have good habits, it gets exposed really quickly. And so again, leading up to that, get those things in order, get that routine in order. Like when are we hanging out? When are we talking about our life? We did a recent episode talking a lot about day-to-day routines, working on those as a couple, experimenting with them. You don't want to wait until you realize you're really lacking in quality time, in sleep, in exercise, in prayer. You don't want to wait till that's at a crisis point. You want to be working at that in the good times. So when the pregnancy is going great, and the morning sickness is gone, you need to work on getting that rule of life in order, and then holding to that during the difficult times.
St. Ignatius of Loyola's discernment of spirits, babe.
I mean, there's nothing new under the sun.
I know, right? It's awesome. Yeah. So we work on routines. Yeah. Like I'm always thinking of how I can prepare the older children to take on some tasks. Yeah. Like I print out laundry instructions I print out, like if someone else were to come into my house and have to take care of my house, I want to be able to give them instruction. And so that's a mindset that I think of like the entire pregnancy.
You made lists last time, I remember, because we got to a place after the baby was born and people were offering help, but we hadn't really thought about it. And so we were kind of like, no, I guess we're good, because we just couldn't think of things in the moment.
Yeah, lists.
And you're like, oh, ahead of time, I need to say, like, if someone asks or offers to give help, like, I want to have a list of, oh yeah, it'd be great if you did some laundry or came over and
I did. I made a list of 5 things before I gave birth to the baby that if someone came over to visit me and was like, can I help you with anything? I wouldn't just be like, no. I'd be like, yeah, here's this list I made when my brain wasn't all mush. Can you do a load of dishes? Or something like that.
The meal train is another good
but
thing.
Also, so as soon as we're pregnant, I'm thinking about childcare after the pregnancy. I'm talking to our relatives that we're planning on having take the kids when I go into labor. We had a home birth last time, so that made it a little different because the kids had to go somewhere else. I'm not one of those people who feels like totally at ease and calm when my children are around me when I'm in labor.
Moved to home birth.
So they have to go somewhere else. And I'm, talking to a friend, making sure that we can get a meal train set up, and I make a bunch of freezer meals towards the end. I haven't made my freezer meals yet, but I make those about a month out, maybe about 20 freezer meals. There's like this lady, $5meals.com. What is it? $5dinners.com. And she has a $150 20 freezer meal plan that's gluten-free, and you get all of the ingredients from Costco.
Nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've made it for a few babies, so she doesn't pay me, but I heartily endorse her. We also have done a staycation, except for this pregnancy, because we had other things going on. God provided in other ways this time. But usually what we do is during the second trimester, when I'm feeling a little better, we do a staycation where my mom or your mom will come and stay at the house with the existing kids.
Or the born kids. Yeah. The out kids.
And
the buns that are out of the oven. Yes, got it.
And we'll just go stay at a local hotel. Because we had wanted to do a vacation, but like travel is so expensive. And it's tiring, and I don't want to do that. And it takes extra time, that you have a babysitter for the kids. And so we were just like, let's just go to the hotel.
It's like a nice mid-pregnancy breather.
Down the street.
Go to, walk around, go to some of our favorite restaurants, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and spend money at places that we wouldn't spend money at with all of our kids.
Right.
So, it's wonderful. So we've done that. And I've heard other couples say that they do similar things in the second trimester because you just feel better. I feel the woman feels better. We're making sure that you're aware you're saving your days off. So that's always something like we're making sure.
Yeah, we have a plan for.
Yeah, from the beginning, because sometimes it does take being really intentional about those 9 months to make sure that you get the days off that you need. And now so many people can work at home so much. So maybe like having a plan for how to manage children while you're working at home, would be really helpful. And practicing that plan so that you're not practicing it as soon as the baby comes and now you're with the children, and your wife's out of commission. I also keep like a pregnancy Word document that I've kept since our first baby 10 years ago, 11 years ago, where I just kind of jot down the things that I go through and when I go through them in the pregnancy. And that's really helpful because sometimes you'll find yourself going crazy or experiencing like a symptom and you'll be like, what is going on? Like, I'm going to die. This means I have everything under the sun that can go wrong in a pregnancy. And like, I'll look at my Word document and I'll just be like, oh, you know what? I actually did experience that and it was okay. Or it was because I drank this herb or had fish oil or something like that, like it's the random things. You never know what it's going to be during pregnancy. So it was just a Word document. It wasn't like a book or anything, and I pull it up and I just add to it by trimester. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And during the entire time too, the whole pregnancy and even before pregnancy, we're kind of setting the mood for our children, to to like integrate that family member into our lives,
Right.
you know?
This is a family project. Having another baby. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a family rallying cry.
Yeah.
You know, where we're just like, we're all doing this for the baby, you know, and it's going to be so exciting when the baby comes and we're going to cuddle it and whatnot. And when you were little, we did this for, we did this for mommy so that she could carry you and things like that. And it's totally normal and natural. Like I have this feeling every time where you're just like, how am I going to love these other children when I have to spend all of this time with the baby? And I think people get concerned that your other children are going to be resentful. And I think that it's a mistake to let your kids know that, to even put it in their head. Because if you are happy and joyful and you are talking about how joyful it's going to be to have this baby come into the family, like they're not going to think anything else until they do think something else. But you've been like, so when the baby comes, you have a story about that. But like when the baby comes and things are different, like I don't like this, at least like you have something to go back to, like your family rallying. Remember, we've been so excited. And when I was nursing you, the other kids had to, they just had to have a little time on their own too. And it's just like what you're going through right now kind of thing. You want to tell a story about Dominic?
Yeah, well, when our second was born, so Lucy, when she was born, and I came home from the hospital after, a day and a half, and Grandma had Dominic, our eldest, he was very reticent. And he was only, 2, just 2, less than 2, right? Yeah.
Just 2, yeah.
Just 2. Math is not my strong suit. He was very reticent. He was very quiet. And I was like, oh, do you want to call him, talk to mommy? And he was like, no, never. You want to go see the baby at the hospital? No, I don't want to. And he wasn't talking at that point, but he was just very, very quiet. Obviously, the whole thing had sort of impacted him, just the us leaving in the middle of the night and the baby stuff, whatever. And he was just
totally normal and like happy about the baby. And then the first time he saw me have a contraction, he yelled at me. He said, no.
Yeah, he was just afraid. He was afraid. Like, what's going on
what is
here?
wrong with this kid? Get him out of the room.
So the point is that, so in that interim time when I came home from the hospital and I was there as a parent of a very young kid, less than 2 years old, or 2 years old, I wasn't thinking in terms of, I need to talk this through with him, because he wasn't even really verbal at that point. And so I was trying to be nice to him and everything, but it sort of on a whim, I was just like, hey, buddy, and I wasn't expecting him to understand me at that point. I was just like, hey, buddy, we have a new baby, but, like you're my big boy and I love you. And we're a family. And I was just like saying things, and I wasn't thinking too much about it because I just didn't expect him to understand it. But he did. Like we got done, and whatever he picked up from that, he gave me this big hug, and then he was smiling again, and he was ready to go to the hospital and see the baby. And so ever after that, I don't underestimate how even the littlest kids, they pick up more than you realize. And so again, I think all the leading up to the baby, talking about it, this is a project as a family. We're going to love this baby. We're going to take care of mommy, all that kind of stuff. But then, even when the baby comes, taking seriously their little feelings and what they're going through, and addressing those and digging in with them, and even talking to the little kids in ways that you don't necessarily expect them to.
Like, I don't want this to sound like contradictory advice, because this makes sense in my head. I don't know if it is making sense as we're saying it. But if you put the fear of expectation on them, the whole pregnancy, it's like telling a kid you're going to go to the water park like 3 months before you go to the water park. There's a reason why people spring Disney on their kids, like as they're getting on the plane, right? Because there's a lot of emotions that can happen in that space of time. So like keeping it really positive and just exciting. And how are you going to help with the baby? You're going to help me change diapers. Can you, just things like that. Or like, I'm going to need you to do laundry, when I'm recovering with the baby or something like that. Like keeping it really, really positive. But then when the baby comes, or when they express their fears, or they act out, or, do something that's out of normal.
Be ready for it. Be ready to be patient with it, and be ready to just talk to them.
But I think that your fears can become really apparent to them.
Yeah.
So you need to kind of come to terms with your own fears without the children. You know what I mean? Like separately from the children. And And it's totally normal to be
Yeah.
afraid that your kids are gonna feel unloved or that you don't have enough love to give to everyone, because then when the baby comes, you'll see like it's like magic. Like your love just becomes more.
Yeah.
It's like the Grinch's heart. Like it's just more. Like you could have never expected it.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time it happens, it's like more. I don't know how to describe it. It's certainly not less. But
I was going to make another exhortation just to the men. Like this is game time, right? Especially as it gets closer to the baby, and she's really feeling the weight of it, figuratively and literally.
yeah.
Like this is game time. And so again, get that rule of life together, dig into it, get those habits down now that are going to carry you all the way through. And it's a good time to do extra prayer for your wife, maybe over your wife. Mm-hmm. It's a good time to maybe fast, do some sacrifices ahead of time, like offer this up. Really go to battle spiritually for your wife. This is the time for it. And for her and for yourself, for her, like praying for the family during that time of real opportunity, but difficulty when the baby comes and schedules are upset and everything's different. And, you never know, what additional health problems or difficulties might be encountered. Just be praying, covering that in prayer ahead of time. This is a good time for husbands to really dig into that.
When I get pregnant, I email convents right away, asking them to pray for me during my pregnancy.
Yeah.
So that's something I've done with every one of our babies.
Right.
So my friend Rachel was reminding me when I saw her the other day, and she's seen me through a bunch of pregnancies. She's my chiropractor. So Dr. Rachel. I was just like, gosh, I'm so worried. Like I'm gaining so much weight and I'm so afraid that like it's going to affect my labor. And I know it is. And like, there's so many more morbidities that can occur. And just like, I was just like, and she's like, I've seen you through 3 or 4 pregnancies. And she's like, you always worry like this. Mm-hmm. You always say these negative things. Yeah. And she's like, why? Because like the evil one wants to whisper these things into your ears. He wants you to hear them because what you're doing is the thing he hates the most. You're bringing a new life into this world, and this life is going to be consecrated to Christ. He wants you to think all the horrible things. And she's so right. Mm-hmm. I am so negative. If my pregnancy isn't going perfect, I'm immediately jumping to like everything that can go wrong during labor and delivery and postpartum. Like my mind is just there, like all the ways that it's going to affect everything. You know what I mean? And I never think positively during pregnancy. So your prayers, and he never tells me when he's praying or fasting for me and the baby. I always find out after, and it's very sweet. Or like when we want to conceive and you're praying and fasting, and then you tell me after we've conceived, and I'm like, oh, that's so awesome, babe. But like the prayers are just so necessary. Yeah. Because I'm so negative and so afraid, you know. So I want to have one of those great labors where you're like not afraid, One of those, eh? Like I'm not afraid of the pain. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm like afraid of just all the things that could go wrong. Yeah. I want to have affirmations. Gosh, well, darn it. If you have a great birth affirmation plan, can you email me or post it below or what? Well, I think pointing out the spiritual battle around it is a really important one, and maybe a good note to end here that, this is such a good thing. This is what the devil hates the most because this is what God loves so much. This is how he brings new people into the world. This is the fundamental cell of society is the family. And so this whole process, this whole messy, goofy process of having babies is God's plan, and he loves it. He shows up to turn your water into wine, but you need to be ready for it. You need to prepare for it. So I thought that was going to be an amniotic fluid joke there for a second. Anyway, on that note, hopefully some of that was edifying and helpful. Let us know your thoughts. Those who've been through this process before. What are your best tips for getting ready for baby time, both for the mom as well as for the dad? We'd love to hear those thoughts. So share them with us. I don't know. How do they share them with us? I mean, if it's on social media, comment or send an email. Do we even know what we're doing here? If you go to elevateordinary.com,
there'll be some way to let us know your thoughts or put it in the comments. Yeah, elevateordinary.com. And if you like what we're doing on this show, we'd love your partnership in it. And there's information about how you can partner with us and support this show and be part of our patron community, the Manor at St. Anne's at elevateordinary.com. And be sure to download the Awaken app at theawakenapp.io, where you can get access to this show and other shows and their associated patron communities. So once again, thank you for this, for joining us for this episode of Elevate Ordinary. God bless you. We'll talk to you again next time.